Okay, I wanted to make an extra video about this because I was looking at a Twitter thread. And earlier I explained how Adam Warfield's LB 227 anti-doxing bill works. And basically, the way I described it was there was something that had to be true from A, something that had to be true from B, and something that had to be true from C in order for this bill to start working. Um, and someone was concerned that the anti-doxing bill, hello, cold brewed tool, would maybe prevent people from calling out Nazis online or something like that. And I wanted to explain why I don't think that's a concern in this legislation, but also maybe ask some questions because that would be a huge concern of mine too. But here's my reasoning. So, what Adam Moorfield pointed to in his response on Twitter was this section B part, and I agree with him and wanted to explain it more. But he also failed to point out some of the exceptions, which I also will point out in a second. But let's talk about section B. In the context of trying to call someone out for their extremist beliefs and why this one particularly would really prevent the whole doxing bill from applying to this situation. So when I described it earlier, I described it as the intent to harm or stalk or the reckless regard to harm or stalk. Harm actually is only defined by two more words, so I don't really know why I summarized it like that, but it's death or bodily injury. So if the post does not cause death or bodily injury, then the only thing that someone could rely on for Section B is stalking. And so let's go look specifically at what stalking says because it's going to make it very clear why it doesn't apply. So, in the actual law, stalking, right here, is described as something that one is done without a legitimate purpose. So, I think there's going to be a broad interpretation of what a legitimate purpose is, but certainly political speech is legitimate. And so the ability to call someone out as a Nazi because you believe that that is wrong, I think would potentially still be protected. But obviously, something like press or your work or your job, those are all legitimate purposes, I think. So then the other thing is that in addition to there not being a legitimate person, it has to be directed at a person in a way that would reasonably cause fear for safety, blah, 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 or to suffer mental anguish. And so, again, as long as no one's getting hurt physically, then the only thing that a person could rely on for stalking is this thing called mental anguish. And as it turns out, mental anguish is also defined. Mental anguish has to include evidence. It doesn't necessarily have to be a medical diagnosis, but it has to be something going on along these lines. And it also has to be protracted and not merely trivial or transitory, which means just temporary. So your posting has to be without a legitimate purpose in such a way that causes someone to have something that is evidenced going on that isn't temporary with them. And I don't think that it's possible that what you were concerned about or like this type of speech would fit in B. But there is another part of that, which is the exceptions. And one of the most important exceptions that is written into this law is that nothing prohibited by the Constitution of the United States or the Constitution of Nebraska can be considered doxing. And so legitimate free speech, freedom of the press, very, very clearly protected in this law. And so I would not worry too much if you were like the type of person who is trying to point out Nazis on the internet because I don't think this would apply in any way. And yeah, basically just don't try to get people hurt or killed. And you should probably be in good shape with that type of speech.